Hello, loves. Welcome to AW Confidential. I remember the first time I watched West Side Story. Rita Moreno was absolutely magical, and I'll never forget that moment. Seeing someone who spoke Spanish like me and resembled us made me feel seen. Broadway's canvas historically has been made up of white actors. Diverse casts and stories were unheard of until close to, I think, around the 20th century, when people of color began breaking barriers. Thais Menendez is a Cuban American SAG AFTRA actor from Miami. She's also co founder of Quien Te Manda Productions. I love that name. A Latina-led production company committed to inspiring underrepresented voices in the film industry. Currently, she stars in Two Sisters and a Piano, a play written and directed by Cuban-American playwright and Pulitzer Prize winner Nilo Cruz. Thais is with me today to talk about her experience in the theater and just in the theater world and how diversity matters. And I think this is such an important conversation as a Latina myself. Welcome, Thais. How are you?
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Yvette. It's so great to be
Oh,
here chatting with you.
I
And
didn't do it justice. I didn't do it justice.
no, I know you're Latina. What's your background?
My mom is passed, but my dad is Dominican and my mom is also Dominican. She had a little sprinkle of Puerto Rican in her.
I feel like the Caribbean, like it all just kind of gets mixed. My parents are both from Cuba, so I'm Cuban American, as you said. How wonderful. I love that you mentioned Rita Moreno just now because like she is an icon. Like God bless that she is still with us. I literally wrote one of my papers in college about her when I was studying acting. They said pick somebody whose career you admire, and I did this deep dive on her life.
Did you watch her documentary?
No, I haven't seen the documentary yet. I just found out
I
that it.
wanted to cry. It's beautiful. You have to watch it.
Okay,
You
I'm
have to
definitely
watch
gonna watch
it.
it because she's such an icon for me. And I just to bring up the question about diversity, I mean, Rita Moreno, like they made her in West Side Story, like
Yeah,
put makeup on her face so that she would look more brown, you know?
yeah,
And
yeah.
it's so frustrating. At the same time, you have her playing opposite of Natalie Wood, who was like a white actress. So we have a history not just of like not having representation, but when there are roles for us, they get played by people who
Yeah.
are not of the nationality. And we still see that happening. So
Absolutely, and we've had that conversation before, with other actors. But first of all, I do want to say congratulations on the play.
thank
I
you.
mean, it's such a win, and the story of Two Sisters and a Piano, which is amazing, revolves around two sisters that are locked up in their home as
Yes.
sort of, I guess, a punishment for speaking out against a dictatorship. No?
Yes. So it is actually based on the true story of a poet, Maria Cruz Elena Varela. No, Maria Elena Cruz Varela, who was jailed in Cuba for speaking out against the government. So Nilo Cruz, who is a Pulitzer Prize winner, he's actually the first Latino to win the Pulitzer Prize for drama, was
I got
inspired
chills.
by her story. I know, he's amazing. He was inspired by her story and wrote this play. It's obviously not exactly like her life, but that was his source of inspiration. So yes, they are in jail in the 90s. They've just been
Yeah.
released. They're under house arrest. And it's, the Cuban government is not a government that allows you to speak out against it. So these women were, they were fighters. In Spanish, the word is like plantadas in Cuba, like in Cuban
Mm.
context. Una plantada is someone who like stands up. They plant themselves firmly against the government. So playing a character like that was a huge honor. We literally just closed this weekend. It was a huge honor to play.
Wow, congratulations. That's amazing. And what was it like? And what did it mean for you as a Latina, as a woman, as, Cuban American to work with Nilo Cruz? That must have been amazing.
I'm so glad you asked me that, Yvette, because I was literally about to talk about that. It has been a dream of mine to work with Nilo for as long as I
Mm.
knew he existed. Back in college, I remember speaking about we were talking about earlier, I remember reading his plays and thinking to myself, oh, these are roles for me. Like these are very
Mhm.
specific, nuanced, complex characters who aren't just no shade to like, movies, the maid or the drug dealer, right? Like
Yeah,
a lot of the times we get relegated to these very superficial
absolutely.
roles. So I remember in college thinking like, especially reading Anne in the Tropics, how wonderful that this playwright is here and I followed his work. Fast forward 10 years later, Nilo comes to see a play that I was in Miami, and ever since then we were on each other's radars. And I remember writing down in my journal, I will work with Nilo.
No.
Yeah. And then 7 months later, I got cast in this play. Not only is he, you know how they say like never meet your heroes because they might be like kind of rude or
I've
whatever?
heard that.
Not the case with Nilo at all. Like he's the most humble, down to earth, like poet spirit. So having him direct his own play was like it was a dream come true. Like I swear.
I love that. I have to celebrate it because I can see your face light up as you talk
Yes.
about it. So
Yes.
congratulations. That's huge. And that is just the beginning, I'm sure.
Thank you so
So
much.
of course. Now, I did some a little, not a deep dive, but I did do some research, and I found out that diversity in the world of theater only started around 1910 with Ziegfeld Follies, when comedian Burt Williams appeared on stage with white performers. He was the first African American to do so. Before that, performers were segregated, which is, I mean, just the thought is just, it's mind blowing. So, Latinos, and I'm assuming I didn't dig too deep, but Latinos came into the industry much later. And I imagine that you had to share your share of challenges in this industry to break in. So, I'm curious, what has your Latinidad ever gotten in the way of getting a role, or has it been a barrier at any time during your career that you can think of?
I love
And you
this.
just got started.
Yeah, I did. I recently moved to LA like 4 years ago. There was the pandemic, but that's a great question. I
Thank you.
always say that my Latinidad is my superpower. The
Yes.
fact that I speak Spanish, the fact that I'm Latina is my superpower. And let me tell you, a lot of people, I'm finding, especially women, don't feel that way. I've had friends of mine who are Latina who say, "Oh, I think I'm gonna change my last name so that
Americanize the name too.
Americanize themselves." And I'm like,
Yeah.
listen, maybe that's advice that somebody's giving you, but that has been the opposite of my experience. In fact, the last 4 projects that I've worked on, including this play, were all not just Latino stories, but Cuban stories. So I think leaning into your authenticity is a great thing. That being said, to your question, it's either you're too white, because I am a light-skinned Latina, you're either too white or you're not you're too Latina, right? Like it's one or the other. So if you spend any time listening to that kind of negativity, you're going to go crazy. Depending on the role, right? So I try not to let that stuff get in my head too much. I try to tell myself that like who I am and what I have to bring is exactly what is needed. Because the right project will see that. And the one that was like my grandmother used to say, lo que está para ti, nadie te lo quita, right? What's for you
Oh,
will buy you.
I
Yeah.
have I actually I heard that this morning a couple of times. It's funny you say that because
Kidding.
my mom, she passed in February, and
Paz descanse.
that is gracias. And that is something she always told me. And especially, I was like, Mom, I didn't get this or I didn't get that. She's like, don't worry. What's yours is going to happen. No one can take away what's yours.
It's so
No.
simple. And the last thing
Mhm.
I'll say on this diversity piece is like, yes, Hollywood has its opinions on diversity, and like it's been really hard for us to break in. I try not to get too discouraged by the numbers because the numbers are grim. Okay. But I think that once people realize like Latinos have incredible market value, not just within our community. Look at The Last of Us, that zombie show with Pedro Pascal as the lead. It's not an inherently Latino story, and yet there's a Latino in the lead role. And how popular was that show? So I just wish that we would, as a like industry, realize that like it doesn't have to be a story about like your abuela and her mercado for it to be a Latino lead in it. Like it can be any story and just put a person of color in it and it still has market value, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's when I talk to you, I can feel it. And I get it because I'm a Latina. representation is obviously very important to you. It's important to us. And you're the co-founder of Quien Te Manda. I really love that name, Productions, a company created to uplift underrepresented voices in the film industry. In your opinion, what are some of the greatest roadblocks for Latinos in theater specifically? Because it's a small community.
Yeah. Well, I think, again, similar to in film, it's this idea that you can't play a role that you're not, right? Like a lot of the times I get pigeonholed into Latina roles because they say, well, you're Latina, so that's what you can play, right?
But but it's interesting, and I have to point this out because I will forget how you have white actors playing Latinos. There's a
100%.
double standard there a
It's a
little
double
bit.
standard, Yvette, absolutely,
Yeah.
like, it's so frustrating, and I will say, like, a lot of the times when I've auditioned for a role that says all ethnicities, I'll go back and look who booked it, and it's a white woman. So, that's not lost on me either. Again, I'm all about mindset, I'm all about not being discouraged
Absolutely.
by that kinda stuff, but I think, one of the biggest roadblocks is that it's trying to get your foot in the door, it's trying to be seen as a whole person and not just, like, I am Latina, right? Like I can only do Latina roles. That's not true. So yeah, I'd say that's one of them, and that's what we hope to do with Quien Te Manda. It is a relatively new production company.
That
Um,
was my next question.
I'm leaning more into producing now, and I love it. I love spreadsheets, so producing has definitely been an area for me.
Oh, better you than me. Oh gosh, no.
I know, don't worry. It's we all have our strengths, like, trust me. There's other things that my partner does that I could never do. So, she's, my best friend, Rachel Morales is the co-founder, and she's a director and, like, has more of the creative, technical part that she brings to the picture, so that's wonderful. But, yeah, we just produced our first short film. We're now submitting to festivals, so fingers crossed we get some acceptances, and, we aim to employ, Latinos whenever we can, but also women and underrepresented genders. That's a big goal of ours is to have like our last film, there was like more than 50% of the cast and crew was Latino and or women or
I
underrepresented genders.
love it.
Yeah.
We need more of this. We need women in the industry, and we need to, pull each other up, because
Hmm.
I think as you climb the ladder, sometimes you forget there are others behind you.
And next to you, right? Look to your left, look to your right. Those are the people that are coming up at the same time as you. So reach out and collaborate, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, excuse me, representation matters. It's critical for us and generations to come to see ourselves on stage, in film, on television, and for our stories to be told. What do you hope to see happen in the future of theater, film, television when it pertains to our community?
Oh, I love this question because whenever I do a play that is representing Cuban culture, you don't know how many times people come up to me after the play with like tears in their eyes and they say, that was me. That was us. Like, vivimos
You're
eso.
gonna you know
I
how many times
know.
yes.
That's our parents, that's their story, and, like, to me, it gives me chills. That is a big part of my why. Like, why do I do this? Why am I in this industry? For that connection, allowing people to see themselves. Nilo Cruz once said, "We as artists are ambassadors for feeling." So if I can allow you
Ooh,
to come in and feel something, my job is done. Like, if you're able to have an experience in the theater or in the film that makes you moved, sometimes it's okay to just go for a comedy. That's a feeling too, but if you can really feel something, my job is done. And that's why I think it's so important. I want to see more of that. I want our people to see themselves.
I love that.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that I can't believe it went by so fast, but one of the things that I love to do at the end of our interviews is offer a quote, a mantra, a piece of advice for our community, just to empower and inspire. For anyone who perhaps has not seen a theater production, and there are lots of people, if you can just tap into when you fell in love with theater, can you share why theater is an important part of our culture and society, and why is it important to experience, if at all possible? Now, a little quick personal story. I remember the first time I went to a play. I remember the first time I took my daughter to see Wicked. And it is It's unforgettable. It's the energy that you get from other human beings on stage telling a story. It's powerful. So being from the, coming off this huge play, working with Nilo, like I want you to share your perspective and give us insight on why this is so important. Why is theater so important?
Oh, yes, Wicked, so good. The movie's coming out.
So
I bet
good.
you're not
I
really.
know. We're waiting.
I know. Theater is so special. I mean, it's when you're doing a film or a show, they can call cut if you mess up, right? They can say, cut, let's go again. She messed up, whatever. If you mess up in theater, like from the performer's perspective, there is nothing like it. You have to keep going. It's electrifying. But to be in the audience is also, like you described, electrifying. And listen, sometimes you go see theater and it wasn't your cup of tea. The same thing with a movie. But being able to support live theater, live performance, concerts, music, I think that that's what separates us from other animals, right? Like art. That's really, when you think about it, at the end of the day, we make art. That's one of the things that defines us as a species. So to me, theater is the art form that chose me. I always say that theater chose me. Like I've been super, I mean, every kid is like kind of crazy, but I've been extroverted and interested in performing since I was a little kid. And then I studied it in college and it was all history from there. But I'd say to anyone listening who has never seen a play, especially if you live somewhere like New York, see what's around you. See what interests you. Maybe there's someone in a show that you think is interesting, or you heard of a star in a play. Go try to see it. And sometimes it can be expensive, which I think is a prohibitive cost. Go on Today
Mhm.
Tix. There's always discounts. There's always something. It can be so moving and so important to bring that art into your life in that way. Yeah,
I
so
love
that's my
that.
little encouragement. If folks can go watch.
I love no, that was perfect. I loved it. And I love that you said it's moving.
Yeah.
Thais, thank you so much. Your energy is infectious. You're
Thank
amazing.
you.
I
You're
wish you
amazing.
oh my gosh. I thank you so much for being here, for sharing your insight and your story. Before I forget, please tell our listeners how to find you.
Yes, you can find me on Instagram at Thais Marie. That's T as in Thomas, HAISMARIE. I was named after a French opera, by the way. So that was my grandma's idea. She was very artistic. She was a singer. So that's where the name Thais comes from. Instagram is the best place to find me.
Awesome. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you, our beautiful community, for joining us on this episode of AW Confidential. Speak to you soon.